Tier list time. Who are my favorites in this year's NHL Stanley Cup playoffs? I'm going to rank them tier S, A, B, and C. So we're going to have 4 tiers, and I'm going to tell you who I think are the elite of the elite in the playoffs, who are the pretenders, who are the contenders, and I'm going to give you a very extensive overview as to how I came to this conclusion. You come to this channel because you're not looking for somebody to just rattle off something between a period saying, I think the blah, blah, blahs are going to win. Yeah, nice pick, guy. We have no idea why. We're going to get into it. We're going to make those details happen right now. We're going to start with the tier list so you can see the ranking early on in this video, but stay tuned throughout the full video because I'm going to tell you why the tier list is the way it is. So you're going to get my tiers right away, and then you're going to see the logic that goes behind these tiers. So stay tuned for it. This one's going to be a great one. And if you're new to Hot Garbage Sports, remember, head over to BetUs.com, use code HGS to bet on hockey, bet on your Stanley Cup favorite, and hey, maybe even use my tier list to help guide some of your bets if you're over the age of majority in your state or province. So BetUS.com, link below. All proceeds go to support this channel. And I also want to start engaging with you, my amazing audience. And I know there's so many great ones of you who have been around since the beginning, and this is your time to kind of get into it, meet Coach Ryan D over a Discord chat and have some fun. What am I talking about? The NHL playoffs start on May 2nd. On April 30th, 2 p.m. Central Time, Coach Ryan D is going to be running a playoff pool for 12 of his fans and viewers here on Hot Garbage Sports. So this video right now, if you go ahead and you subscribe or are already subscribed, drop a comment below saying you want in the pool. It will be $50 USD. It will be put through League Safe, super safe. I don't touch the money. It's a third-party app we've used for years. It is fantastic. It will go ahead and be winner take all, and you can join the playoff pool and see if you can beat Coach Ryan D at picking hockey. We're going to do it over a Discord chat, live in person. You'll get to meet me. The pool will take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, so make sure you earmark a little bit of time away, and it'll be a really fun way for us to go ahead and build this community event. And if you want to watch the draft live, you can as well, just as long as you join Discord. All the links are below. So subscribe, comment, make sure you're in for the $50 USD, and I'll see you at Coach Ryan D's playoff pool April 30th. All right, so let's go up and pull up our tiers. S, A, B, C. We're ready to go. In the S tier, I have Carolina, I have Colorado, and I have Calgary. There's going to be some mind-blowing thoughts in here, but remember, I'm going to explain it by the end of the video. I don't think there's much debate about these 3 teams being in the S tier, but you might be wondering, you said, Coach, the East is way stronger than the West. Why do you have 2 Western teams in there? Calgary and Colorado, when you see the stats, it's very clear why they're S tier, and they're playing out of the weakest conference for sure. There is definitely a more likely chance that those 2 end up making it to the Stanley Cup final than the craziness in the East. In the A tier, we have Florida, Toronto, the New York Rangers, and the St. Louis Blues. Coach, you said the Rangers and the Blues are pretenders. I'll explain why in there, but they still have some good underlying reasons they have to end up in the A tier for now. In the B tier, now you may think I'm starting to be crazy. Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, Boston, Edmonton, and Nashville. How are the defending Stanley Cup champions in the same tier as Nashville? We're going to explain it. And then in tier C, it is Washington, Minnesota. What? You're going to put Minnesota? This guy's a hater. Turning off the video. No, don't. Stay with us. The LA Kings, the Dallas Stars, and the Vegas Golden Knights. 50% of the total teams in the NHL make the playoffs. Is that good? Yes. Is it special? Absolutely not. Fans, you're all so passionate that you think my team, I have the underlying stats, we have it. Will you find any reason to put that bias into your team? Because the NHL is not like the NBA or the NFL. We're tribal. We follow one team. Those other leagues predominantly get more coverage over the course of the entire league, whereas the NHL, we really do stay in our bubble for our teams. Every team has a reason that they're good. Every team has a reason they're in the playoffs. But again, it's 16 teams. You just made the top 50% and only one's going to win the cup. That's why we have to tier them this way. So we're going to break down all the jaw-dropping reasons that Tampa Bay is in the B tier, that Pittsburgh's in the B tier, that Washington and Minnesota, 2 very popular teams, are in the C tier, and how the heck are the terrible goaltending Toronto Maple Leafs or the pretenders of the Blues and the Rangers in the A tier? This is crazy. You know what? let's get after it now so we can give you the reasons behind the madness. We're going to go ahead and pull up the NHL Point Rankings. You all know where they're sitting at right now. The Panthers and the Avalanche on top. Look, if we just use the season rankings, this would be very easy, but the point system is hyper flawed. We put the records in there. 52, 15, and 6 for the Panthers. 54, 14, and 6 for the Avalanche. But the record system is a joke because normally in sports, you cannot produce more points than what you get for a win. You get 2 points in the NHL for a win, but there's a possible 3 points in every NHL game because of the loser point or the bonus point. Whatever side of the fence you sit on, there are 3 points technically up for grabs and it ends up skewing everything. It's a stupid system. We'll make a whole nother video about why that system is ridiculous. So what we then need to do is take a look at the overtime wins, because at the end of the day, if you tie in regulation and you go to overtime, that's a mini game. That's not real hockey. It's just a totally different thing. So there's a lot of people and a lot of stats out there that say, hey, just include the overtime losses and losses. It's not that easy, because when you win overtime or lose overtime, you didn't lose in a proper hockey game. You lost in a mini game. So then we have to look at total overtime games played by team. And when we pull up the list here, you can see the Panthers have 20 overtime games. That's incredible. That's 20 ties. It doesn't matter if it's a win. It doesn't matter if it's a loss. It was a mini game. It's 20 ties. Even though the NHL doesn't have true ties because the shootout's taken away for it, at the end of the day, the playoffs 5-on-5 hockey, it's a tie. So when we take a look at the overtime games and the overtime wins versus the overtime losses, this is going to start framing our thinking as to who actually is the better team in the end, because just because you got to win an overtime or a loss doesn't actually mean that much. And if your jaw hit the floor like mine on this is crazy. That is a lot of games that end up being a tie. No wonder the NHL has a problem. I think this 2-1-1-1-0 point system totally broken. That is way too many ties for anyone's comfort level. So then what we're going to do next is we're going to adjust the NHL records for ties. So when we pull it up here, let's take a look at the Panthers, for example. They had 52 wins, 15 losses, and 6 overtime losses. But if we take into account those 20 overtime games, they're actually 38, 15, and 20, because those are 20 ties. That's a lot of wins that comes out of the Panthers category. And you can see there's a stark adjustment when you're looking at this list. It's starting to jump off the page. Wow, the Carolina Hurricanes with 42 wins are the second best in the NHL with only 14 ties. The Colorado Avalanche are number 1 in the NHL with 44 wins. And then if you look at the bottom at teams like the Washington Capitals or even the Dallas Stars, you start going, ugh, those teams are not as good as their point totals say. So now you're starting to get an idea of the fact of where we're going with this. That like, okay, maybe all teams aren't pretty good. There definitely is starting to look like an elite tier here. But the NHL has always worked on a point total system, not a win-loss system. So let's go ahead and adjust the point totals based on those ties. We know a tie is 1 point, we know a win is 2 points, and we know a loss is 0 points. So if you got rid of the loser point or the bonus point, this is how the standings would actually be shaking out with adjusted points versus regular points. And what you can see is not only the point totals go way down, and that's because you're giving up that third point that's in there, but there starts to be an adjustment. The Hurricanes actually take over the Panthers from the number 1 spot in the East, for example. So go ahead, take a look at this list, because now we're going to go ahead and we're going to rank them by the adjusted point totals. If we take into account every overtime win or loss as a tie, you can see it's actually the Hurricanes passing the Panthers. The Maple Leafs still end up in third place. The Avalanche are far above any other team in the NHL as the best team according to point totals, but that's because you got to look at the West and the bottom teams. Dallas, the Knights, the Kings, the Predators, these are not strong teams compared to the East. The East is so much stronger than the West, it's not even close. And I know Western fans say East media bias. I live in the West. I cheer for the Jets. I understand the East media bias. They're a better conference, hard stop. Okay, so now what we need to do is put in an adjusted win rate. Win rate is really what's going to tell you what you need to see here. Point totals are fine, but they're just point totals. Win rate is what matters, because ties only count as half a win, right? I mean, that makes perfect sense. So when you go ahead and put in the adjusted win rate, it gives you the distance that top teams have against each other. So when we're looking at the win rate, the Carolina Hurricanes are number 1 in the NHL, tied with the Toronto Maple Leafs and tied with the Colorado Avalanche at 69%. 69. Great number. Awesome. Childish. But then you can see as well that there is a stark difference between the top teams in the East and the bottom teams in the East. Basically from the Bruins up. And I mean, look how much further the Bruins shoot up in win percentage when you take into account overtime games. They're a much better team than what their record would have you say. They're actually at 63%. You can see the Penguins, the Bolts, and the Capitals not having the best of seasons. There's reasons for it, and we're going to get into way more data points as we go forward. And then when you look at the West, you can also see that the Knights and the Kings, those are not good teams. And the Minnesota Wild, heavily overrated when you take into account overtime wins. The Wild win games by like 1 goal. We're going to break down even more though. So we went through all of that to hit one data point, and that's adjusted win rate. You need to know what a team's win rate is. Point totals aren't going to help you with that. So yes, traditionally we talk about point totals, but that's just for standings. We're trying to tier and rank the best NHL teams. So right now we have one data point, and that's adjusted win rate. The second most important data point is going to be Corsi. For those of you who haven't heard of Corsi, it's the amount of shots you direct towards the net. Sometimes they get blocked, sometimes they miss the net, sometimes they're a shot. But a shot on goal, yes, it's the only chance you got to actually score. But the more shots you put towards the net, the better. And the more shots that come against your net, the worse. So what does Corsi take into account? It takes into account your offense and your defense. It's a really great stat to say, look, you're either scoring a bunch or getting a bunch of scoring chances, and you're limiting scoring chances against you. So a team like the Florida Panthers that gets a lot of chances against, but wins scoring races because they get a lot of chances for, it accounts for that. It accounts for a team like the Minnesota Wild and the Boston Bruins, who are really stingy on defense and maybe don't get a lot of chances for. It's a really good number to show how you are doing offensively and defensively all over the ice. So it's our number 2 data point here. And when we bring up Team Corsi, we're going to leave this in order of the regular season standings. What you can see is any team that's highlighted in green, they're a top 5 team in the NHL. Any team that's highlighted in red, they're below number 16 in the NHL. As we go through these next steps, remember, just because you're in the top 16 doesn't mean when the bottom 16 drops out that you're really that good. Look, the Tampa Bay Lightning have a Corsi of number 12 on this chart. When you think about it, in the top 16 teams that made the playoffs, that's actually not that good. So it may be in the top half of the NHL, but we're going to drop out 16 teams as this goes forward. And if you're below position 16, that's ugly heading into the playoffs. That's why you get a red. So white is neutral. So I can take it. It's not good. It's not great. It's just fine. It's a playoff team. Green, you're elite. Red, you're trash. So the Panthers, the Hurricanes, and the Bruins, all elite Corsis. And this is just such an important stat. There is a weighting to this. Corsi is super important. The Flames and the Kings, also excellent Corsis. They are very good at generating chances for and limiting chances against as a percentage. The reason I say the Rangers and the Blues are pretending teams, 25 and 24 in Corsi. Look, Corsi isn't everything, and we're going to adjust, and we've already adjusted. You've seen my tier rankings. So Ranger fans and Blues fans, don't get so sour. They're already in the A tier, but you can see why I think they're a pretender. At the end of the day, if your Corsi isn't that good, I just don't really think you can hold in the playoffs. That's my opinion of it. I've seen the stats. I've broken it down. I've done it for 25 years. I've played the game. I've coached the game. I know what I'm talking about. What I'm saying. 25 and 24 is atrocious. That is not an acceptable Corsi going into the playoffs. So that's where I get my pretender status from. The Predators and the Stars, there's no doubt in my mind that at 17 and 19, that's not good. And that makes sense based on the regular season standings. But the Rangers and the Blues, overperforming, and that's going to be because of these next categories we take a look at. Goalie is a very important category in the NHL. So again, same thing. If you're a top 5 team, you're going to get green. If you're below 16, you're going to get red. If you're anywhere else in there, you're going to get white. What is goalie GAR? Remember, this is goals above replacement. This is how we rank how a goalie is doing. The higher the number, the better. If you're at 0, you're replaceable. If you're negative, you're worse than replaceable. So when we take a look at the best goaltenders in the playoffs right now and the teams with the best goalies, it's going to be the Hurricanes, it's going to be the Rangers, it's going to be the Avalanche, it's going to be the Predators. Those are the elite teams for goalies. You take a look at their goalie guard, it's very clear that the Rangers and the Hurricanes have 2 of the best goalies going into the playoffs. The Tampa Bay Lightning, Vasilevsky hasn't had the year Vasilevsky normally has, but he still has an excellent goals above replacement. 25 is really good, but we've got to draw a line somewhere. They're number 11 in the NHL right now for goaltending. Vasilevsky Vasilevskiy is number 11 this year in the NHL. And all we care about is right now, this moment in time, this year in the NHL. So is Vasilevskiy maybe over the course of his career the best goalie in the playoffs? Absolutely. But right now it's all about Freddie Anderson and Igor Shesterkin. And then Darcy Kemper, is he being propped up by the Colorado Avalanche's excellent team? Maybe. Predators, UC Saros, there's not much in front of Saros, so you know he's damn good. The concerns you have in net, you're looking at the Maple Leafs. This is a huge problem. This is a huge problem. Yes, they made the A tier, but oh boy, goaltending is bad. Jack Campbell is number 76 in the NHL, negative 1.2. Yeah, I get it. He started off hot, but his entire year, even with that incredibly good streak, is negative. He's below replaceable. And if you think any of your other goalies are better, he's still your best goalie on your roster by Gar. That's not good. That's actually really bad. The Panthers are being overrated in most people's statistics because Bobrovsky is only goalie 17. He's got to find Gar. He could win a Stanley Cup, but let's not go ahead and sing the praises and say the Florida Panthers have elite goaltending in net. They don't. They just pay like it. The Bruins, Jeremy Swayman is number 20. Everybody said, hey, Linus Ullmark's the guy carrying it right now. I know he's the guy carrying it right now, but Linus Ullmark is number 48. He has a goals against of 2.6. Swayman has a GAR of 12.7. 12.7 versus a GAR of 2.6. Rank 20 versus rank 48. Swayman is the better goalie. If the Bruins thought this through properly, Swayman should be their guy, but they're likely going to get into this weird battle where if Ullmark stays hot, he's going to carry him into playoffs. He loses one, Swayman's going to go in. That's not good for Boston, flip-flopping back and forth this way. They should just go with Swayman. But anyways, Washington, same thing, not great goaltending. The Minnesota Wild with Marc-Andre Fleury, he's only got 6 games with the Wild, but his goals above replacement is 6.3. That's not good for a goalie. He's 36th in the NHL, only counting his games with the Wild. If you count his games with the Hawks, yeah, he's been really good. I think this is the only one where maybe we could actually bump this up quite a bit because Fleury's damn good. But right now, the stats are what they are, so I have to call them what they will. But if you want to put an asterisk behind Fleury and say he's better than this, you can. Edmonton, we all knew Edmonton's goaltending is bad. 35th, that's Mike Smith, 6.9. Everybody else on Edmonton is worse than that. And then everyone else in there is just in the middle. Goaltending matters. That's another point we have to look at. Let's get into special teams. Power play and penalty kill matter. Now, in the playoffs, it's a different game. They call less penalties. We know that. So you can't overinflate the power play and the penalty kill, but you also have to give it its just dessert. So even though they're not going to call penalties the same way they do in the regular season, you still have to know that when you get onto a power play, it is just absolutely in your best interest to score. You need to be hot on the power play and penalty kill to win a cup. When we're taking a look at the best power plays in the NHL playoffs, you got the Leafs as number 1. That's going to really help out with that terrible goaltending stat. You have the Rangers as number 5. Look, I said it in my roster review video. The Rangers have a great top 6 and then it just falls off a cliff. The trade deadline did help them. They are number 5. You got to give them credit on the power play. The Avalanche, the Blues, and Edmonton, very, very strong on the power play. These are great categories for these teams. Washington, terrible power play, but everybody else in the East is pretty okay. Again, take a look at Tampa Bay, number 16. Take a look at Pittsburgh, number 15. These are 21% power plays. That's nothing to write home about. It's fine, but it's not good. This is the bottom of the top 16 teams. The Bruins power play, not that great, but remember their Corsi is much higher than these other teams. They're number 4, so offensively and defensively 5-on-5, and the games played 5-on-5, they're better. When you go ahead and look at the Flames are number 9. That's not bad. 23.7% isn't bad on the power play. I dig it. The Predators and the Stars have a very underrated power play, and the Knights and the Kings have an absolute trash power play. So on to the penalty kill. When you take a look at the West does not know how to kill penalties. They are terrible at it. When you take a look at the East, they're all pretty good at it. In the East, the elite teams are going to be the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, when you're number 1 in the PK, I would rather have a hot PK than a hot power play going into the playoffs. But that's just an opinion piece. There's no truth to that. But penalty kill means so much. 88.58. The Hurricanes can get through a lot of trouble because of that penalty kill. The Penguins, also excellent penalty kill. Interesting to note that all that offensive talent, mediocre power play, great penalty kill. That's why Pittsburgh's kind of a deadly team. These veterans start getting wily. They adjust their game. They adjust their game to things they can do. Penalty kill is an intelligence-based setup. It's not just skill setup. It's speed and it's intelligence. So the Penguins and the Canes, elite. Look at the Panthers, though. That is not a good penalty kill. You do not want to go into the playoffs ranked number 17 with an 80%, actually 79% penalty kill. That is why they're not in the S tier. Hard stop right there. Goaltending, penalty kill, not good enough for the Panthers. Then you look at the West, the Wild, that's terrible. 26th. Edmonton, 20th. The Kings, 22nd. Dallas, 18. The Knights, 21st. There are only two competent penalty kills in the West, and that is the St. Louis Blues and the Calgary Flames. Outside of that, it isn't very good. I don't even want to give a lot of credit to the Avalanche's penalty kill here. The West, yuck. Gross. But hey, there's another category for you. In our last two videos, and I'm going to link them at the end of this one, wait till you're done to go check them out, I talked about the 10 points you need in order to have a Stanley Cup contending roster. When you go through here, here's a summary. The Panthers, the Penguins, the Bolts, the Avalanche, the Flames, and the Blues all have the best rosters. They check the most boxes. There are a whole bunch of teams there that have a whole bunch of holes heading into the playoffs. Your opinion may say otherwise, but I'm telling you, if you take a look at those videos, the opinion's well thought out. I think these lists are pretty close to accurate at this point. And you can see that the old dog teams, the veteran teams, the Tampa Bay Penguins, the Flames, these are the teams that have the best rosters, and it makes sense. They've had the most success in the last little bit, not the Flames, but the Penguins and the Bolts. So when you're going ahead and evaluating, hey, is this a good roster? I mean, you just got to look at past success, right? And then finally, everybody wants to talk about playoff experience or playoff teams. Playoff's a different game. Look, this is the lowest rated category for me because every year is a new year, but it is something you should take into account. How is the experience in the last 5 years for each team? So this is the total amount of rounds won or Stanley Cups won in the last 5 years for every team. And what you can see is that the teams on the bottom, like Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, Boston, Washington, they've won cups, and that's because they have an aging roster. So of course, they're going to be lower in the standings than the new hotness that's coming out, but you can't discount the playoff experience from those teams. Florida, I'm sorry, Florida, until you win a round, they haven't won a round in 5 years, you're not going to get any credit. Great regular season team, you got to do something in order to get credit. There's no credit due when you haven't won a round. The Maple Leafs are in the same boat, and the Rangers, we all know, are young and up and coming. They'll be there. The Canes have a mediocre or middle playoff experience. They've won 3 rounds, but they haven't gone super deep. The Avalanche have middle playoff experience. They've won 3 rounds. They haven't gone super deep. And then you take a look at the Flames, the Wild, the Kings, and Edmonton. Terrible playoff records over the last little bit. Really, in the West, it's all about St. Louis. They're the only team that has any kind of meaningful experience going through. The Knights do, yes, but they're outside of a playoff spot right now. Okay, so there are all my key points. I'm going to go ahead and put up the summary list here for you. Now, what you see is a summary of all the areas we've checked. And remember, green is top 5, red is below 16, white is anywhere between 16 and 6. When you're taking a look at this, it is very clear to see these are ordered in rank of tier. You can see so clearly why the Carolina Hurricanes are ranked in tier S. There's really no negative against Carolina. Their power play is fine. It's the only weakness on their team. Their roster, look, maybe it could be an 8 out of 10. I got it as a 7 out of 10, but maybe it's an 8 out of 10. Outside of that, they have one of the best Corsis, the best win rate, the best goaltending. I mean, they're just stacked. Then you go ahead and take a look at the Panthers. They're going to get a grade of A because the goaltending and the penalty kill hold them back. Look, their Corsi is so good, and that's going to prop them up. I mean, when you can score, you can score. There's no question about it. But you can't tell me seriously you think they're an S if they have categories like that are missing. Then the Maple Leafs and the Rangers, they also have their holes too. The Maple Leafs having the best power play in the NHL, that means a lot. It means something. And they have a very good penalty kill. They have a very good Corsi, and they have a very good win rate. They just have terrible goaltending. The roster is okay. We know they lack some defensive depth, but we know that they have a possibility to do something here. When you don't have goaltending, it feels like they're going to fall off, but I can't put them outside of the A because we've saw guys like Antti Niemi win Stanley Cups. So Campbell gets hot. You never know. They got to stay as an A. The Rangers, same thing. Look, that Corsi is bad. It's really bad, and that is just such a glaring red hole for me. I would rather have everything else red but Corsi if I had to be honest. But outside of that, they have an excellent goalie. They have an excellent power play. They have an excellent penalty kill. The Rangers could make some noise. I just don't like the depth of the roster at all. So, but you got to give them an A, credit where credit's due. And then the Bolts, the Penguins, and the Bruins, hey, When you're taking a look at a team like the Bolts, the Penguins, and the Bruins, you just look at all that white and you go, they're fine. That's it. When you look at their roster and what they've done this year, from a win percentage to a Corsi to a power play, they're mid-pack to anywhere between 12 and 16. They're fine. There's nothing great. There's nothing awesome. But when they step into the playoffs, you have to look at that roster. 9 out of 10 boxes checked. Deep roster, lots of cup wins. You can't discount them until they totally fall off the edge. So they actually get buffed quite a lot because of that roster. But when you look at the performance, you've got to be real and you got to put them in the B tier. Doesn't mean they can't win the cup. It just means, it seems pretty obvious to me. And then when you look at Washington, they're the only team in the East that I look at here and go, nah, I don't like them at all. They're going into C tier. In the West, really clear that the Flames and the Avalanche stand above everybody. There is no weakness from the Flames. There is no weakness from the Avalanche. The Avalanche, the Flames, the Canes, they're the top three. The Blues get an A category, but that Corsi is killing them. I hate the fact that they're not generating enough shots and they're getting too many shots generated against them. The law of statistics and averages say that can't hold the whole way. Remember, Blues fans, when you won the cup that year, this was reversed. You had one of the best Corsis in the NHL and everything else was failing. And then by the second half of the year with the new coach, everything propped up just enough and you were one of the best and you ended up being the best team in the NHL that year. But your Corsi was never bad that year. This year, it's different. Then you go ahead and take a look at Edmonton to the Knights. Look, someone in the West has to win, and I get one of these teams could get through. I just don't like any of them. The Bs and the Cs from the West, I think they're super weak. After the top two, maybe three in the West, it becomes quite weak here. Okay, so that is my playoff tier rankings. I'm not going to back off from it in the last 10 games. People are going to say, hey, look at the last little bit. You know, this team beat this team 2 times, and this team... Look, you got to look at the whole season. You don't just delete the first 20 games either. It's all a working average when you get into the playoffs. So go ahead, jump onto BetUs.com, use code HDS, bet on your favorite team to win the Stanley Cup. Come, comment, subscribe, join below, join Coach Ryan D's playoff pool that'll be on the 30th. It's been awesome having you here on this channel. Let me know, did I get this right? Do you like these playoff tiers and are you liking these videos? Have a good one till next time.